question, because these are the questions that come up for us in our lives. These are the things that we need to discern within our minds. We need to have a critical eye at what we see in life, because we have this placement in our society, in our world, in our families, in our educational system, where we are taught certain things, and we take them as self-evident truth, because that's always been the way we've thought. That's always been what we have known. And we don't question them. We don't question whether that is really our truth or not. And what happens is that we go through our whole life, and then maybe something catastrophic happens, or something that is so totally outside of the realm of what we know and believe comes into our awareness, and we have to reconcile it. We have to think about it. How is this possible? How could this possibly be true when everything that I've always believed has always been true for me? There is wisdom in holding lightly to those facts, those belief systems. There is wisdom in allowing ourselves to be able to gently move through our lives, examining, being curious, questioning. But then there is also a certain kind of grace that comes from knowing the depth of truth within us. So I'm going to tell you a story. Before I even get into all of this, you notice I haven't clicked yet over to any of my quotes yet, which normally I do right away, but I'm not going to do that today because I want to tell you a story. When I was in ministerial studies, okay, so I moved from Winnipeg out to BC, to Kelowna. I'm 2 years in to a 3-year program, and I'm in the midst of planning some big projects and planning some, doing lots of studying, and I'm recognizing suddenly I have this awareness dawn on me that I don't know if I believe in God anymore. What? I moved all the way. I sold the farm, literally. I had a farm. I sold the farm to move to Kelowna for ministerial studies. Do I believe in God? Do I believe all of this stuff that I'm pouring my heart and soul into? My kids stayed back here with their dad. I left my family to go study ministry. Do I believe all of this? Do I believe it enough to make all of the sacrifices worth it? Well, I went through a process within myself of inquiring. I asked myself some deeper questions. I decided to go to logic because that felt like it was safe for me in that moment. So I thought to myself, okay, my entire body, we evolve as human beings. We've evolved, everything on earth has evolved in a way to be of use, to have a purpose. So every part of my body has a purpose. Every part of my mind has a purpose. So if there's that part of my mind that since birth, since I was a small child, has constantly been in the seeking of the divine, constantly been in that desire to have a deeper relationship with the divine part of myself. Since I knew that that was a part of myself, I must know that that part of myself has purpose. So, okay, there is something. There is something that I want to be in communion with. Something that I want to be in communion within myself. Okay, so I can believe that because I know that to be a felt truth for myself. And then as I logicked it out more, I thought, well, okay, so is that thing just bare principle that has no feeling to it? Is it just like a mathematical equation? Or is there something more that is a heart and soul of that? Something that created me, that is in the creation of me as I move through my life. And again, I thought, well, okay, if I have emotions, if I have that felt sense of my presence in the world and the presence of other beings in the world around me, and I can commune with them heart to heart and mind to mind and spirit to spirit, then I must know that if we believe as above so below, if we believe that everything that is created must have come from something, then I must believe that that divine something that created all of this within me is also within that. It's also a part of that. So I logicked it all out, and I thought, okay, so there is love. There is some higher love in the universe. There is some higher soul in the universe, some over soul, as Emerson would call it. There is something grander, and I am a part of it, and it is a part of me, and I am expressing it all the time. And so I came back to that sense of my faith. But I came back to it in a deeper, more profound way because I questioned it. Because I questioned everything. And notice, I wasn't questioning for anybody else. I wasn't saying, you shouldn't believe that, that's ridiculous. I wasn't saying anything to anybody outside of myself because it wasn't about anybody else. Questioning, the most important questions, are always about what's happening within me. It's about wondering what's happening within me. So, today's topic is the grace of truth, finding that truth through questioning, but it's also the wisdom of questioning. Because when we don't question, when we sort of skip through our lives without asking the harder questions, we don't allow ourselves to come to the depth of the answer. So I chose for a Bible verse today. This is from Thessalonians. Do not extinguish the spirit. Do not treat prophecies with contempt, but test all things. Hold fast to what is good, meaning hold fast to the truth that is underlying everything, that deeper truth, but question. Allow yourself to test all things. And all of the New Thought greats would tell us the same thing, that we demonstrate our truth through prayer, through our consciousness and growth in consciousness, that we test ourselves, we test our consciousness by seeing what it produces in the world. And so what it produces in our experience around us, that shows us what is in our consciousness, right? Ernest Holmes wrote, practically the whole human race is hypnotized because it thinks what somebody else told it to think. Question everything, especially me. Question everything I say, because if it's not true for you, it's not true for you. Find your truth within you, because your truth within you is the truth that God is raising up through you and as you. You are your own tuning fork of truth. Allow yourself to feel that. You know, I find it so interesting that within the teachings of Jesus, or Yeshua, the master teacher, there are countless times when he asked his disciples to think more. There's a whole section in Matthew 5, that a litany of you have heard it, that it was said, but I tell you that. And he says that over and over and over again. You've heard it said, but I tell you that. Meaning I'm questioning all of that conventional wisdom, all of those truths that you have been taught in the way that you've been taught them. There is something deeper. Look for what's deeper. Think for yourselves. And in Luke, he talks about the, you know when you see clouds that there's a storm coming. You know that. So why don't you trust your judgment on other things? Why don't you judge for yourself, he asks. The Bible has a lot of those sorts of questions in it, coming from that master teacher, Jesus, Yeshua. Just as many other wisdom teachings do. You'll see those kinds of questions coming up in the Tao Te Ching all the time. I'll talk about that a little later. You see those kinds of questions coming up in Zen Buddhism. In fact, the Zen koans, are like questions that are unanswerable because they want to shake up our thinking a bit. They want to show us that we can let go of that surface thinking. We can let go of all of that stuff on the top, because when we can let go of it, we can go deeper, and we can understand at a deeper level. We can feel the depth of the universe through us. There is a flow to life that we cannot access when we are so stuck in our surface ways of thinking. Charles Fillmore writes it this way. He says, "We can readily see how a whole race might be caught in the meshes of its own thought emanations, and through this drowsy ignorance of the human ego," I love that, the drowsy ignorance of the human ego, "remain there throughout eternity, unless a break were made in the structure and the light of a higher way let in." Now that was the same quote that was in what Bev read earlier. I love that quote. Drowsy ignorance of the human ego. This is what we get caught up in. We must be willing to question those thought emanations. We must be willing to discern, to have critical thinking, to know for ourselves what is really true. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, "A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds." I love that man. I love that, because what he's saying is that we have this idea that it's always been this way, therefore, or I've always been this way, therefore, or maybe that this book or this leader has said this, therefore it must be true. And we don't critically think for ourselves. We don't discern for ourselves what is really true. And then Henry David Thoreau said, "Not until we are lost do we begin to understand ourselves." And that's sometimes how we have to come to this, right? We come to this sense of questioning when we are feeling lost, when we are feeling a discomfort within ourselves. And that discomfort is a beautiful thing. That in itself is a grace. It gives us the opportunity to think deeply. It gives us the opportunity to question what we always thought was true, and to find a deeper understanding for ourselves. There's a beautiful book that I talk about all the time. I'm sure you've heard me talk about it before. Byron Katie, Loving What Is. I came to that book shortly after I came to New Thought many, many years ago. And she has this process of inquiry. And what she says is, when you are thinking something and you're feeling some struggle around it, when you have a should in your mind, this should be different, or this shouldn't be like this, those shoulds in your mind are your cue to inquire, to go deeper. And when you hear those shoulds in your mind, the first thing you do is you say, well, is it true? And you might think of all the surface answers of why it would be true, but then you ask the next question. Can I absolutely know that it's true? How do you know? How can you absolutely know that it's true? Just allowing yourself a little tiny break of a question in there. A little tiny break of, maybe I don't have to believe that that's true. And then you go to the next question, which is, how does it make me feel when I think that thought? Do I feel struggle? Do I feel pain? Do I feel unhappy when I think that thought? And then you ask yourself, who would I be if I didn't think that thought? Who would I be if I didn't have that should in my mind? That book was life-changing for me. It was life-changing. It was relationship-changing for sure, because I had shoulds coming out the wazoo. I had so many shoulds about what everybody else around me should be doing and how they should be acting and how I should be in their lives and you know, and. There's all of those shoulds. And especially for a person like me who has a little bit of the control freak on me, and I've let that go and let that go and let that go over the years, but that was hard won for me because I needed to go in and inquire in myself over and over and over again. Would I be happy if I didn't believe that? Would I be at peace if I didn't believe that? When we question, we allow a deeper wisdom to arise for us. We allow ourselves to come into a deeper sense of who we are. And it's interesting because there's Don Miguel Ruiz in the Four Agreements. He calls our belief systems domestication. You know, this is how we've been domesticated. We've been taught that we need to believe this way. We've been taught that we have certain roles in our lives. We've been taught, and our society has unfolded and evolved over time in a certain way because we have these belief systems and we make these agreements with ourselves. And so what he says is the belief system is like a book of law that rules our mind. Without question, whatever is in that book of law is our truth. We base all of our judgments according to the book of law, even if these judgments go against our own inner nature. And when we question, it's our own inner nature that we are trying to get back to. When we allow ourselves to question those agreements, those thoughts, those belief systems, we allow ourselves to get back to our own inner nature. Because that own inner nature is divine. That is the divine life within us and through us. And when we are in that place of reaching back into that divine nature, we have access to all of the power that we are, all of the power that is behind us as the divine living through us. We have access to a creative energy that brings us into our joy and into peace and into love in much, much deeper ways and allows us to have the impact in the world that we would love to have, that we all would love to have. So I'm inviting you to question everything, and I do have a Tao Te Ching for you as well that I'd like to share with you. Not knowing is true knowledge. Presuming to know is a disease. First, realize that you are sick. Then you can move towards health. The Master is her own physician. She has healed herself of all knowing. Thus, she is truly whole. And by knowing, what I mean is, and what they are talking about, is that ego mind. When you heal yourself of being attached to, we're all going to have the ego mind. It's going to be there always, and we're always going to hear thoughts coming into our mind, and sometimes we're going to laugh at them and say, wow, that was a weird thought. And then sometimes we're going to think, oh, that must be true because I thought it. Don't believe everything you think, because the ego mind chatters all kinds of things. When we heal ourselves of that chatter, when we heal ourselves of believing that chatter or attaching to that chatter, that is when we are truly whole. That is when we truly heal ourselves. When we allow ourselves to be open to what is our source, we not only become whole, but we hear the truth of our being. And that truth, that is grace. It's not something we can earn. It's not something that even can be given to us. It just is. It is. It is there and it is available for us. And when we allow ourselves to deepen into the truth of who we are, we receive that grace and it changes everything. It changes everything. Rainer Maria Rilke, beautiful poet, he writes, "I want to beg you, as much as I can, dear sir, to be patient towards all that is unsolved in your heart, and try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms and like books that are written in a very foreign tongue. Do not now seek the answers, which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them. And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer." That's what I would have us do. That is my wish for you, my hope for you, and for myself, that we can hold lightly all of the questions and allow ourselves to one day live into the answers. So join me if you choose for our affirmation. I release attachment to the habitual thoughts of my ego mind. I live in the question. I heal myself of false knowing, and in so doing, I awaken to a deeper understanding of the truth of my being. And so it is. Amen.